Getting past our conflicts. I wish I could stand here this morning and tell us we don't have conflicts. I got it this morning in probably the most simplistic thing that I've ever done with our 7-month-old Jack Russell Terrier, Deacon, is play a game of fetch. It's a simple game. You don't usually have to teach a puppy how to play fetch. Pick up a stick, throw the stick. The dog goes to chase the stick. The dog picks up the stick. The dog brings the stick back. Why dogs are fascinated with the game of fetch, I don't know, but they seem to thoroughly enjoy it. It's something that Deacon regularly enjoys. Today, I picked up the stick. I threw the stick. Deacon ran to the stick. Deacon sat down and chewed on the stick. Dude, what are you doing? This is not fetch. Even when we think things are normal, things are regular, things are as we would expect them to be, conflict presents itself. Deacon was like, I'm not having it. I'm chewing on this stick because this is what I want to do. Sometimes what he wants and what I want are not the same thing. And then we end up in conflict. Not wearing a robe today, not wearing a jacket today, not wearing a white shirt today. Today is blue collar shirt day. It's a day where we're going to have to put in some work. There's a book by John and Stacy Eldridge. It's a marital book entitled Love and War. That sounds like kind of an odd title for a book about marriage. Love and War. Clearly, I'm not the first person to encounter conflict. Listen to a simple expression from this book. The first big shock we receive in marriage is that it is hard. The second great shock usually follows hard on the heels of the first, that we are, both of us, a royal mess. Sorry for those of you who are single and looking forward to marriage. Those of you who are excited to have grandparents and parents who've been married for decades and been at this thing for a long time. According to the authors of this book, even the most intimate human relationship we choose, marriage, is filled with conflict. I had a sermon I wanted to preach that I was excited about, that I started putting together on Sunday of last week, and then Monday came around, and then Wednesday came around. For those of you who don't remember, Wednesday is actually a national holiday, Juneteenth. I won't tell you something that you probably already know, but there's an awful lot of members of the Black community that have no clue whatsoever what Juneteenth is. I know you know all about it. I know you understand the history. I know you understand the implications. I'm saying there's a bunch of folk in the Black community that have no clue whatsoever what Juneteenth is all about. They don't know that even though the Emancipation Declaration was signed by the president of the, I use this term loosely, United States, there were some people in the South who were doing incredibly well, profiting from cotton, and they chose to simply not tell their slaves that they were free. I grew up a Yankee in New York State. My parents are from the South in Houston. I didn't know anything about Juneteenth. We moved to Virginia. I didn't know anything about Juneteenth. I went to school at Prairie View. I didn't know anything about Juneteenth. I found myself in Galveston, Texas, and that's where I found out about Juneteenth. And though it's now a national holiday that a lot of people still don't understand, you could argue it's a celebration of conflict and its resolution. Just in case someone didn't guard their Saturday night and needs to know what this sermon is all about, every conflict has a Christ-centered solution. But that does not mean that we will have our own way. Every one of us has experienced conflict. That's how we were born. We got here in conflict. We were very comfortable where we were. But that doesn't mean Mama was comfortable with where we were. And so we got here in conflict. Some of us didn't realize we were supposed to breathe. So, conflict. We get here in conflict. Now, Harvard Law School, in an effort to teach their lawyers about mediation, about conflict resolution, has 5 suggestions on how to resolve conflict. Number 1, recognize that all of us have biased fairness perceptions. All right, let me translate that into Thomas. I believe I'm right, and I believe you're wrong. Or you believe you're right, and you believe I'm wrong. And neither one of us sees how the other sees this being resolved as fair. Perceptions do not equal facts. So when you get in that argument and you're expressing your point of view and they're expressing their point of view and they're nowhere close to one another, Harvard teaches its lawyers to realize there's some bias in what we even think is fair. Might need an unbiased, agreed upon arbitrator to determine what is a fact rather than opinion. Okay, they also teach that avoid escalating tensions with threats and escalating moves. You know, when you say stuff like, oh, I oughta, or I double dog dare you, or I'll let you fill in the blank on what else that could be. They try to teach their lawyers that litigation is a last resort. You don't threaten people with what could happen if they don't do what you want them to do. Number 3, overcome an us versus them mentality. When you're in conflict, it's really easy to butt heads and to go at it as if it's us versus them. It's you versus me. It's one of the first things we learn in school. All right, we're gonna start some teams. Let's have the boys versus the girls. I mean, that's conflict. And we learn early on to go against each other, but we don't always learn how to resolve it. Rather than demonizing other people and seeking common goals and collaborative solutions, we just me against you, us against them. Number 4, look beyond and beneath the surface to identify deeper issues. A lot of times people are fighting over something, and what they're fighting about isn't even what they're fighting about. What they think they're arguing about isn't even what they're really arguing about. A lot of people get into arguments about money, but it's not really about money. It might be about respect or a lack of respect, or appreciating the perspective of somebody who is hurting, but it doesn't come out that way. It comes out in this finite resource we call money. Number 5, separate sacred from pseudo-sacred issues. You know, this often comes up when someone has passed away and their family members who have not clear understanding of what their loved one wanted. And somebody feels like it's got to go this way, and somebody else is like, it's got to go this way, and this is what he would have wanted, this is what she would have wanted. And if somebody touches it the wrong way, everything blows up and there's conflict. Sometimes we need to find unique ways to get past our conflicts. I appreciate Harvard Law School giving us some insights in how we can deal with conflicts, perceived conflicts, but this is not a Harvard Law School presentation. And I know some scripture that's loaded with conflict. Luke chapter 22, verses 48 through 51 declares, "But Jesus said to him, 'Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?' When those around him saw what was going to happen, they said to him, 'Lord, shall we strike with the sword?' And one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. But Jesus answered and said, 'Permit even this.' He touched his ear and he healed him." Getting past our conflicts. I can't tell you that this is something that I've already done, so now I'm telling you how to do it because I know how to do it. I said getting past our conflicts. There's an S on the end of that, plural. It's not like you're going to face one conflict and once you get by it, bam, everything else is absolutely wonderful. Don't you wish you could walk down the aisle, give your hand to the Lord, unify with the church, bam, you got past that conflict and now you'll have no more in life. It'd be easy to fill up a church if that was true. I did not say getting past our failures. No, we're still gonna fail. And I didn't say getting past our conflicts together. Because I want us to understand there are some things that we need to do to get past our conflicts that we might put on somebody else, but it's not their job to help us get past our conflicts. I've got conflicts within myself. That doesn't have anything to do with you. I told you about a conflict I had this morning with Deacon. You didn't even know about it. So as we try to get past our conflicts, we need to understand that they can be ours even if one of us doesn't perceive it the same way as another. But we still need to be able to get past it. We can't just live in conflict, stay in conflict, arrive in conflict and refuse to get past it. We need to be able to move past our conflict. And this text can help us not only see what they did wrong, but help us to see what God is calling for us to do. When conflict comes, we need to know what it is that we need to do. First thing I want to deal with is betrayal. Verse 48 says, "But Jesus said to him, 'Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?'" This word betrayal, it really means delivering. It is something that Jesus was asking Judas, are you bringing this thing to me, betrayal? It's something that Matthew 25, the same word is used when you think about the Lord who brought the talents to those that he gave talents to, and then some of them multiplied the talents. Others multiplied the talents. One hid the talents. The way the talents were brought is the same word as this betrayal. It's the bringing of a betrayal. You know, like when a little kid brings you something, they might bring you a kind look. It's nothing like looking at a baby and a little baby looks at you in a way that they are bringing joy into your life. That's what they bring. They bring joy. They can do something for you that no adult could possibly do. And you can't make them do it. You can ask for it, but that doesn't mean you're going to get it. But when they give it to you, when they bring you that smile, that appreciation, just to be able to see you and interact with you, that's a special thing. They might bring you a hug. It's a special thing that they're bringing. Have you ever seen a child who just finished eating and the smile might be gone and they look like they're in discomfort and they start making a face? And sometimes we say that they're baking a cake. They're getting ready to bring you something else. What people bring us sometimes is conflict. And I think about that UPS slogan, what can Brown do for you? We all have choices as to what we are going to deliver and what we're going to receive. So that conflict that you think someone else entirely put on you, it's up to you whether you're going to accept it or not. Betrayal has a way of making us feel damaged, hurt. Things are not going like we like them to, and there's conflict. We don't like to talk about the betrayals we've done towards others, even if we're not aware of it ourselves. But betrayal is a part, perhaps the beginning of conflict. His chosen disciple, Judas, betrayed the master. I can only imagine what Judas had in his mind about what Jesus had not done, that he thought he would do in delivering them in this lifetime. And perhaps Judas thought he was ushering into what Jesus was reluctant to do in this life. Judas, that's not your place. And Judas betrayed Jesus with a kiss. Sometimes our conflict comes from us doing what is not ours to do, but no matter what the case is, when someone feels betrayed, that often can be the beginning of conflict. Conflict often starts with betrayal. But it continues with a bout. Verse 50 says, and one of them struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his right ear. He cut off his right ear. There had been betrayal. And now all of a sudden, there's a bout. He cut off the man's right ear. The difference between death and a mistake sometimes is a matter of inches. How deep the damage is that we do to others is sometimes determined on just how close we get, what kind of harm we do. We might not necessarily know what effect it's going to have. I don't know that the intention was to cut off the right ear. The intention might have been to do more harm, leading to death. The intention might have been to do more harm, and it just was a glancing blow that ended up in a cut off ear. But no matter what, damage was done. We don't get to determine how the conflict that starts with betrayal, what it turns into when we decide to strike a blow. We don't get to decide how somebody else is going to feel about it. We don't get to determine how deep they go into the abyss. We don't get to decide how conflict feels to them. But once we get in that bout, we're in it. We also don't get to decide how they're going to respond. David was a man of conflict. David was somebody who, though he sought God's heart, and he was a man after God's own heart, David sought God's heart. But Absalom, his son, sought the hearts of the people, and it created a conflict. 2 Samuel 15. David sought God's praise, but Saul sought the praise of the people in 1 Samuel 18. David sought to serve God. That man the Bible calls a fool. Nabal sought to serve himself in 1 Samuel chapter 25. On the 7th of February of this year, in Columbus, Nebraska, the police were called to do a wellness check. And instead of being able to report back that the person was well, they discharged their weapon and shot a 17-year-old to death. Sometimes conflict turns in ways we would never desire. It takes us to places we don't want to go, to end up somewhere we don't want to be. And sometimes the results are tragic. The next time you find yourself in a fight, ask yourself, if you win this fight, will you still lose? If you find yourself in a fight, in a relationship with somebody else, that conflict that you're trying so hard to win might mean your winning means you lose. Because if you're in a relationship with someone and they lose, you lose. If you're in a relationship with someone and you want to win at all costs, and you cut off the ear, you've done irreparable damage. Be careful of the bout that you find yourself in. Understand who and what you're really fighting. Ephesians chapter 6 verse 12 says, "For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. I thoroughly enjoy the movie War Room. There's a moment where Miss Clara is describing the battle that often goes on in marriages and in conflicts of others who are close together. And she talks about the fact that we fight the wrong fight. We battle the wrong battle. And we argue with those we care the most about. And instead, we don't realize who we're really fighting, who we ought to be fighting, who we ought to be praying for, who we ought to be caring for. So when you find yourself in conflict, in order to get past it, recognize betrayal might be the beginning. And the bout might be the middle of where you find yourself. But verse 51 takes us to where I want us to get. But Jesus answered and said, permit even this. And he touched his ear and healed him. After betrayal and after the bout, Jesus was bigger. I want to encourage us to be bigger. Sometimes we have to give up our rights for peace sake. Sometimes it's not about winning so you can be right. Sometimes we have to be willing not only to give up our rights for peace sake, but also to make the offended person whole. Not only did Jesus say to permit this, he put it back on, and he made him whole. I know I've quoted this before. It's one of the most powerful verses in Scripture, in my estimation, Genesis 50:20, where it says, but as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring about, as it is to this day, to save much people alive. No matter what somebody means as they come at you, and even if they have betrayed you, you find yourself in a bout, I encourage you to be bigger. Don't allow the mess of the conflict to take you down to a place that none of us belong. As much as I love the movie Inside Out, I would love to be able to quote to you some of the battles of what happened in Inside Out 2, but I myself was given the opportunity to go see the movie, but I haven't seen it, so I look forward to seeing Inside Out 2. And I imagine some of the conflicts that Riley will face in her age will help her deal with conflicts in caring for herself and others. But I have seen Big Hero 6. And as much conflict as there is in that movie, I love how it is resolved by being bigger. I love how in the movie Big, a teacher who was traumatized by little itty bitty students ended up being bigger and learning from them, and then was able to teach them. And I won't even get into the movie on Golden Pond, where tragedy after tragedy found itself in the midst of relationships, and in the end, being bigger allowed people to be better. In the court of Christianity, a horrible crime had been committed. as we offended God, and we did what we could not resolve. And somebody had to pay the price. Somebody had to do something in order for us to be able to have a relationship with God that we needed but could not earn. And though it was me who committed the sin, I could not save myself. So my elder brother Jesus stepped in and said he would pay the penalty that I earned. Willingly gave his life at Calvary to solve the conflict I couldn't fix. He chose to be bigger and do what I couldn't do. And so he saved me, was raised again on the third day. And because he did, because he was bigger, I now have been saved. Who are you willing to pay the penalty for? Jesus paid it for you. We get past our conflicts. When it's no longer you or me that has to win, and it's not you or me that has to raise our hands in victory, but when we find it's you